Welcome everybody. You can see participants joining. And while participants are joining, I'll just again thank Laura Spilsbury and Sarah Donaghy from Mannion Daniels, the fund managers, for joining us today, which is extremely kind of them on a busy Monday morning. And also Pauline from Railway Children doing our case study. It's so good to have you with us. You will see in front of you today's agenda. From those of us who don't know us at the Alliance, we are the representative body, the membership body for the international development sector in Scotland. So we have about 170 organisational members, about 50 individual members, and they're all based in or represented in Scotland. The aim of today's webinar is to find out more about UK Aid Direct open funding windows and to help you to find the answers you need and give you the confidence you need to be able to apply, to be able to develop a concept note at this stage. The purpose is really threefold: to help you feel more equipped and confident, to those two different streams under UK Aid Direct, the community partnership and the impact funds, by having all of the information you need to help you to develop an application. The second part, to enable you to be able to access that live Q&A with Mannion Daniels, two representatives from Mannion Daniels, the fund managers, are with us today, who can help support your application. And the third purpose of the webinar today is to allow you to share the different aspects of grant applications with each other that you find most challenging and you'd like most additional support with. So for the timings, we're going to have 20-minute presentations from Mannion Daniels, and then we're extremely pleased and grateful that Railway Children, who are a successful applicant under UK Aid Direct, are going to speak with us for about 10 minutes as a case study, and then we have about 20 minutes towards the end for Q&A. So just quickly to introduce the speakers, starting with Mannion Daniels, we have Sarah Donaghy, who is the Deputy Fund Director, and Laura Spilsbury, who is the Fund Project Manager for UK Aid Direct and from UK Aid Match. So Sarah, over to you.
Everybody, my name's Sarah Donaghy. I'm the Deputy Fund Director on UK Aid Direct. I also work on UK Aid Match and I work with Mannion Daniels. And I'm joined today by Laura Spilsbury. Laura, I don't know if you just want to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Spilsbury and I am the Fund Project Manager on UK Aid Direct.
Great, thanks Laura. So other Laura, if we're able just to move to the next slide, please. So thanks for inviting us here today to talk through the UK Direct. We've been asked specifically to talk through around the application process. So we focused on the current open funding window, which we call UK Direct 5s. It's the 5th round of funding, and that is for impact and community partnership grants. And that's what we'll really be focusing on. I will just note that the Small Charities Challenge Fund is also open for applications. And if you're interested in that, there's a webinar recording available on our YouTube and information also on our website. But today's presentation is focused on the impact and community partnership grants. So I'm going to go through as speedy as possible to talk through. We'll give a bit of a background of UK Direct. I think most people are probably quite familiar. I looked at the list of attendees before today's sessions. I think most of you will be familiar with the fund, but we'll give a bit of an overview of that. Then Laura will talk us through some of the kind of the process side of the timelines and the review process, and then we've got some application tips and guidance in there as well. So if I could just go on to the next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. So just to briefly talk through UKA Direct. So as you may or may not be familiar, it's the UK's funding, UK government, so it's a Department for International Development's funding mechanism to support small and medium-sized civil society organisations. And it's organisations that are working to achieve the global goals. As Laura will note actually in our next slide, this particular funding round has a focus also on the longer term impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it still falls within organisations working to achieve the global goals. It's been going for a long time, as you can see here on the slide, and it is multi-sectoral in nature. So we have organisations working in a variety of different sectors, from education to nutrition, to focusing on disability inclusion, and lots of different types of projects across lots of different countries as well. It is a highly competitive fund. So you can see here, these are the success rates for the two most recent funding rounds. So for the UK Direct 4 funding round, there was a 5% success rate for applicants. We saw quite a significant increase in applications for Direct Round 4, which opened last year, and the previous year we had the third funding round with a 6% success rate. You can see here on the right hand side the different types of grants that fall under the UKA Direct fund. I won't go through all of them, and as I say, we're focusing on community partnership and impact here today. The Joe Cox Memorial Grants were a one-off funding round, and SCCF, or the Small Charities Challenge Fund, is open at the moment, and there's information available on our website. I'll hand over to Laura now, and I'll switch off my video as well, just to save on bandwidth.
Thanks, Sarah. And if we could go to the next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. So I won't put my video because my internet has also been a bit sketchy as of late. So this is the 5th funding round for UKA Direct. This funding round, as Sarah mentioned, we are welcoming applications that address the global goals whilst also addressing the longer term impacts of COVID-19. So what do we mean by the longer term impacts? So COVID-19 will have impacts over and above the immediate consequences we are currently seeing of the pandemic. Such impacts are caused by measures taken to contain and control the virus. In the longer term, it is believed that these impacts may affect the quality of lives of the most vulnerable and marginalised more than COVID-19 itself. Now, the longer term impacts of the virus will be experienced across many sectors, and any interventions that contribute towards the achievement of global goals should be considering how these impacts can be addressed in the project design. So applications addressing the longer term impacts could, for example, include projects focused on education interventions that support the safe reopening of schools and the development of catch-up or condensed curricula to achieve learning outcomes. And that's just obviously one example if a project is focused on education. So this is a 2-stage funding round process. So the round is now open for concept notes, and those successful at this initial stage will be invited to the next stage, which is the full application stage. For both impact and community partnership grants, organisations must be registered either in the UK or in one of DFID's eligible countries. And you can find a list of all those eligible countries on the UK Direct website. So please do have a look at that list. Now, a new eligibility criterion introduced for this round is that applicants are not eligible when the average annual grant value applied for is more than 50% of your average annual expenditure. So for example, if your average annual expenditure over the last 3 years is £150,000, you'll be ineligible if you apply for a grant of £300,000 for a 3-year project. And this is because the annual average value of your grant is £100,000, which is more than 50% of your £150,000 average annual expenditure. If, however, your average annual expenditure over the last 3 years is £500,000, you would be eligible to apply for a grant of £300,000 for a 3-year project, because the average annual value of your grant is therefore less than 50% of your £500 expenditure. Now, please do note that this isn't the same as the previous eligibility criteria, where applicants couldn't hold more than 40% of DFID funding. Additionally, to be eligible, applicants must not have negative net assets, negative unrestricted reserves, or negative free reserves, and these will be checked by our fiduciary risk team. So that's another very important eligibility criteria that's been introduced for this round, so please do take a look and ensure that you are eligible. So if I could move on to the next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. So community partnership grants are open to applications from organisations who are registered in the UK or registered in one of the lowest 50 countries in the UNHDI, or registered in a country considered by the DFID to be of high or moderate fragility. Now, when assessing where an organisation is based, the UK Direct team will look beyond legal registration and consider where the organisation is controlled from and the level of autonomy of the different offices. This relates to governance and, in particular, financial management of the entity. So, for instance, if a grant applicant is registered in Bangladesh, which is an eligible country as it's in the lowest 50 countries in the HDI, but all management support functions take place in the United States head office, which is an ineligible country, with very little autonomy in the Bangladesh office, this would deem the organisation to be ineligible. Now, as I mentioned, you can find a list of all the eligible countries on the UK Direct website. If in your application you list that you're delivering a project in an ineligible country, your application would be deemed ineligible. So please do make sure that you check that list, as well as double checking the countries you select in your application form. We have in the past had applicants accidentally select an ineligible country, but unfortunately it will mean that you are ineligible if you do misselect a country that isn't eligible. So organisations applying for a community partnership grant must have an average annual income of less than £1 million per annum for the past 3 years, and that's as shown in approved organisational accounts, and relevant documentation will be requested as evidence. Now, new organisations with fewer than 3 years of accounts can still apply, but in such cases, average annual income will be calculated based on the organisation's length of operation. And for community partnership grants, grants are available of up to £250,000 for projects lasting up to 3 years. If we could move on to the next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. So similarly to community partnership grants, impact grants must be applying from one of those eligible countries. I won't go through the bullet points again, and the same considerations apply which are ran through in the previous slide around where the proposed grant holder is controlled from and the level of autonomy of different offices. Now, for impact grants, organisations must have an average annual income of less than £10 million for the past 3 years. Again, if you don't have 3 years set of accounts, you can still apply. And grants worth between £250,000 and £1 and £4 million are available for projects lasting between 3 and 5 years. Now, previously, impact grants were required to provide 25% match funding. And by match funding, I mean funding which is provided from another source, so for example, another funder, or from the organisation itself, say from their unrestricted reserves. Now, given the current circumstances, and for this funding round only, no match funding is required for impact grants. As I mentioned, that is for this funding round only, so important to note that. It is, however, of course, still welcome, and if you do have match funding secured, it should be included in the budgets where appropriate and committed for the whole project period. If I could move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide gives the anticipated timeline for UK Direct Round 5 applications. So I'm sure, as you're all familiar with, concept notes opened on the 18th of May and will close 2 weeks tomorrow on the 30th of June at 5 p.m. UK time. And it's important to note that it is 5 p.m. UK time. All concept note applicants will be informed of the outcome of their application, and this will take place in August. Those successful at concept note stage will be invited to full application stage and will have access to the portal to complete their full applications from the 25th of August 2020. And the deadline for applications is anticipated to be the 22nd of September 2020. And it is anticipated that full applicants will be notified of the outcome in December of this year. And I think Sarah's just got
Thanks, Laura. Oh, sorry, got a tickle in my throat. Just to say, I think everybody may be aware of the current temporary pause on funding decisions that DFID have shared some information on, which is available either on the supplier portal, or if you have not got access to it, then we can share that with you. Just to say that at this stage, we are not aware of any delays on this particular funding round. So these timeframes, from our perspective, from Mannion Daniels' perspective at the moment, are still what we're working towards. Obviously, there may be an impact on the funding round based on the temporary pause, but at this stage we're not aware of any delays on this funding round. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Sarah. And if I could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. I'll just run through this slide very quickly. So in terms of the application itself, you can access the application form via the UK Direct website. It's on the homepage. There's a login /apply button in the top right-hand corner. All applications have to be submitted via our online portal. We won't accept applications via any other mechanism. Now, there's a lot of guidance available on the UK Direct's website, and we would really encourage you to read all of that guidance before you start your application form. Your application is far more likely to be successful if you follow the guidance available. All accompanying documents requested must be uploaded by the deadline. If you don't upload the required documents, then unfortunately your application will be deemed ineligible. Each application is reviewed by technical experts, and every applicant will get tailored feedback after they are notified of the outcome of their application. As I mentioned, the deadline for concept notes is Tuesday the 30th of June, and it is 5 p.m. UK time. So for those based outside of the UK, or if your downstream partner is completing the application form, then it's really important that they note that that is 5 p.m. UK time. And then financial management assessments and due diligence will be carried out on all successful organisations.
Thanks, Laura. If we could just go to the next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk through briefly just now is, so this is the assessment criteria. It's also what the application form, it's the subheadings within the application form. You may have already participated in or listened to one of our webinars that's available on our YouTube channel that we've done over the past few weeks on this funding round. I know what has been asked for this particular webinar was to kind of highlight the key I guess, tips or things to think about when making a successful application. So I've got the same slides, but I'm not going to talk through them all. Laura, if I could just move to the next one, please. Sorry, I've got a bit of a tickle. I'm not going to talk through this slide because all of the information on this is around the eligibility. It's really important that you do look through the eligibility criteria. It's all available either on our website, but you can also have a listen to the recordings from previous webinars. So I'm going to skip over this slide and move to the next one. So what I've pulled out here, you can see, so what I've done is just pull out into the box to summarize for the top kind of tips. So here we've got proposed project and context. Sorry, it's typical, isn't it, to get a tickle in your throat just as it comes to you to talk. So here, what we're really looking for, you can hear probably my voice talking through this in a bit more detail on the webinars that we've recorded. But I'd like to just really emphasize that here we're looking for really strong problem analysis that's informed by stakeholder consultation. So the best applications that we see have consulted with a variety of stakeholders in the project context and been able to really clearly articulate what the problems that they're looking to address are. And when I say what the problems are, really looking at the root causes of the problems as well. And just moving on to the next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. So this one's around the approach and delivery. So again, there's lots of different sections within this on the application form. And what I've pulled out is the importance of linking your approach and delivery, so what you're actually proposing to do, to your problem analysis. So quite often we'll see applications where we don't quite see the link between the problems that they've outlined and the interventions that they're proposing. And it's really important that that link is really clear. And we also really encourage you to be able to articulate the anticipated change. So don't just tell us what your inputs are, what your activities are going to be. It's really useful if you're able to tell us what change you anticipate to see as a result of doing X, Y, and Z interventions. The next one is around capacity and risk. So two things to highlight here. On the safeguarding question, it is, please note, it is project-specific safeguarding measures that we're looking for. We don't want to see that, we know that you will have organisational policies, and we'll look at that during the due diligence process. What we're looking for in this section is project-specific safeguarding measures. And in terms of your capacity, if you can focus on the achievements, so don't just tell us that you've had a previous grant of X amount of pounds and reached X, X number of beneficiaries. Tell us what the change was. What did you see by delivering that grant? What were you able to achieve with those funds? And then lastly, it's project financials. So the key, that's just on the next slide, please, Laura. So the keys here, the next slide has got some pointers on eligible top tips, it's called, for budgeting. So it's got basically eligible and ineligible costs. Please do familiarise yourself with our guidance. And in your budget, there's a template that you use. Please provide really clear budget notes. So the best budgets that we see are those that have got really comprehensive notes it's on the right-hand side of the template, really comprehensive budget notes as to what the costs are covering, and they align with the proposed approach and the delivery. So where you've told us in your application form in the narrative what interventions you're going to deliver. We see a really clear alignment with your budget. So that's very quickly the top tips. The next slide is really just around budget tips. So don't forget to include reporting costs, NPAC, and your M&E, for instance. And then we've got some non-permissible, so ineligible costs. And that the full list of that is available on our website in the budget guidance. I think that's all from us just now. Looking forward to hearing your questions once we've heard from Pauline at Railway Children, and we'll do our best to answer them. So back over to you, Jane.
That's lovely. Thank you very, very much indeed. Pauline Medovnikov, have I pronounced your second name correctly?
Well pronounced.
Thank you for joining us, and it will be great to hear some more about your experiences of working with, I think you're an impact grant holder?
Yes, that's correct. So I just put my video on a moment so I can say hello.
That would be lovely.
Can see me.
And particularly any kind of one piece of advice that you might want to offer to applicants, or a challenge, one of the biggest challenges you might have encountered in the process of applying and how you overcame it, or one piece of information that you wish you'd known when you were making the application, now that you have successfully completed. So just some thoughts to throw in there. So please address 1, 2, 3, or none of those as you wish.
Okay, some great questions there. Yes, so I'm the grants manager at Railway Children. We're based near to Manchester, and we received an impact grant back in 2018. So Railway Children, just very briefly, to give you a bit of context, we believe that no child should ever have to live on the streets. So we work with children and youth living and working on the streets in Tanzania, which is where the grant is. We also work in India and here in the UK. So our team in the UK is here in Cheshire, but we also have a team of about 20 staff. Originally it was in Mwanza in Tanzania, but thanks to the grant, we've now been able to set up an office in Dar, because what the project enabled us to do was to expand our activities across 6 cities in Tanzania. So it was a large upscaling of our previous work. So the grant was actually worth £3 million over 3 years. Started in April 2018, so we've just completed the 2nd year. I won't go into the detail about the project because we haven't got time, but it's about working with the children and the youth on the streets, reintegrating them into their families, working with local partners to help us implement that work, but also working with advocacy partners and local government, which was all a new area for us. So that was a different outcome that we were looking to achieve. So to address the questions, I was thinking about one piece of advice I would give, and it possibly seems like an obvious thing and quite common sense, but it would be to have a document called assumptions. So as you're starting the actual putting together of the concept note, it's to keep a track of all the assumptions you make with the team as you go along. So particularly around numbers of beneficiaries, direct beneficiaries, indirect beneficiaries, and to write that down in a document and to keep it where everybody can see it, because there is so much monitoring. There's the quarterly reports, the annual reports, forever looking at your impact and indicators. And the number of times I've been back to that document in the last 2 or more years, it's probably one of the most used documents. So I would definitely say write it all down. When you're actually putting together the concept note, it seems logical and you think, I'll never forget where I got all those numbers from. But it's surprising, a year down the line, it's like, why did we put so many indirect beneficiaries and where were they coming from? So that would be one piece of advice. A second piece of advice, however, would also be around the indicators and the fact that these can change. I think it's important to know that there's so many unanticipated events that are going to come up in the next few years. Your indicators will change, and it's good to know that the team at Mannion Daniels have really helped us change some of our indicators, especially around the advocacy work, which was new to us. And I think we were quite ambitious with it, and we've been able to change the indicators further down the line. So as long as you're transparent and you've got reasoning behind why some of these indicators might change, I think it's good to know at the beginning that it's not going to be set in stone all the way through to the end of the project. I hope it's okay to say that. Biggest challenge, well, at the time, in looking all the way back to 2017, when we were filling in the forms, they looked quite different actually. The budget particularly was horrible. It was all online and it was very complicated, but the good news for everybody applying in this round is that that has been changed and it's now a separate Excel spreadsheet. And you've also got more time to put together, more time between the concept and the main proposal So it's also good to know that Mannion Daniels listens and does make the changes that people have recommended. We have, I think it's quarterly meetups, obviously used to be in person, with other grantees, and more recently we had an online meetup, and it's for Mannion Daniels to listen to us as well as for us to learn of new developments, but it's for them to get feedback from us. So the process has developed and become easier. So the biggest challenge, I think, we're actually applying in round 5 as well. So the biggest challenge for us at the moment is pulling together all the different ideas. There are so many good aspects of the work that we do. It's difficult to select which ideas you're actually going to put into your concept and which ones you think will develop the best over the 3 years. So it's quite a challenge getting different people's input, making sure everybody's heard, making sure the team in Tanzania is heard, making sure it's driven by them. It's been quite a logistical thing getting different meetings put in, getting the team in Tanzania to consult with our beneficiaries, with the children, the youth, the parents that we work with, also with local government, seeing if they want to develop the work further that we've been doing in the current grant, and then bringing all those consultation notes back together and developing it into a concept. So that's quite a challenge, but it's one of the more interesting parts of the project, I think, is the project development. And then looking at the actual application form, we always we have to convert it into a Word document first of all, because it only comes off as a PDF. Convert it into a Word document, and then I share it with the team in Tanzania, and we literally go through the form and allocate each section. People volunteer or get cajoled into doing different sections. We decide who's the best person to write that particular section, and that always works really well, and then it's reviewed by the rest of the team and we make all the different changes. Another challenge has been in the new project, because we expanded to 6 cities, we took on 9 new partners locally in Tanzania. So capacity wise, that was quite an amazing thing to do. I would say if you are looking at working with a lot of partners, start to get all their documentation now, because you need to put down details, even on the concept form, about their registration, their address, different details that you don't actually see that until you click through on the online Smile. More information is asked. So make sure you've got all the information to hand for all the partners that you're going to work with. And then finally, one piece of information I wish I'd known, I think it would be around value for money, because I worried about this quite a lot, because our project is quite intensive. We have an intensive family therapy methodology, so it means we don't work with that many families intensively, and it can be quite expensive. And I worried that value for money was all about being cheap and having lots of beneficiaries for less money, which obviously isn't the case at all. It is about the quality of what you're delivering, and it's just to re-emphasise that Mannion Daniels completely get that. And even though I think some aspects of our programme are quite expensive, at first glance, it's not held us back with the value for money aspect so far. The only other piece of information would be around the match funding, but that isn't a requirement in this stage. But if you are having match funding, one of the mistakes we made was we didn't explain to our implementing partners properly that it was match funding, and they had to spend this much of one donor, this much of the other donor, and we were finding they were spending all of one donor's funding and not the other. That was a mistake we made in the first 6 months, just because of the miscommunication, but we've ironed that out now, I think. Okay, I think that covers the 3 questions, but happy to take any questions.
Pauline, that was absolutely excellent. Such an illustration Almost
Thank you.
not quite felt as we were living through some of that up with you. I really liked your approach as well on the sharing that Word document amongst partners and the team working and developing it all together. I think that's a superb tip. I know you had an extremely busy Monday. We would love it if you stayed with us till the end. So in case there are any questions which you would be best able to answer for us. We're going to end at 12:30. The Q&A is going to feel frustratingly short because we're going to actually want to finish the Q&A session just 2 or 3 minutes earlier than the end, so 12:25, 12:27, to allow us to wind the session up and talk about the next stages. So I'm going to start with the people who fed in the Q&A in advance and then move on, if there's time left, to people who've put Q&A in during the session today. But really just to reassure everybody who's either put questions in advance or during the session today, if we don't get round to you today, your time is not wasted. Those questions have been, will be captured, and we will make sure that they're not kind of lost in the ether. We'll come back to you in a bit of our own post-event tying up of loose ends. We'll make sure that they're dealt with. So going first, to questions that were put in advance. Hold on. I would like to ask, to start with this one about COVID-19, I think is quite topical, and as this round was dedicated to it. How will a project be adapted if the COVID-19 pandemic does not evolve as anticipated? So what is anticipated by DFID, and how do we know, as it's so many uncertainties, how we cope with that in developing an application? Sarah?
Yeah, thanks, Jane. Really good question, actually. So I think I interpret the question to be really asking about, we've got a question within the application for the concept note to ask applicants to sort of tell us how they will adapt really around if the pandemic doesn't evolve as anticipated. So no one sort of knows what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, or let alone in a few months' time with this this pandemic, and we appreciate that, and DFID certainly appreciates that. So and that obviously relates to what you put in your application now at the end of this month. By the time that the funding sort of materializes at a later stage, it could look very different. So what we're really asking for in that question is to understand what approaches to adaptability do you have in place? So you may or may not have conducted a needs assessment to be able to develop your proposal. And that will have been done, say now at this kind of time. So if then, what do you plan to do to make sure to check that it did evolve as you thought it would, or how will you adapt? What mechanisms will you put in place? It could be quite practical within the way that you're managing the funds, or related to stakeholder consultation, for instance, to know what the situation is and how things evolve. So that question's really about the what adaptive mechanisms will be put in place to make sure that you're able to respond to a particularly volatile and changing environment and context.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. This one I would hope might be a bit simpler. Can an eligible organisation based in Africa apply for and hold both a community partnership grant as a lead partner or sole partner and be a downstream partner with a UK organisation on an impact grant?
Yeah, Laura, did you want to take this one, or shall I?
Laura, can you?
Do you want to take that one, Sarah?
Sure.
Don't want to give
Yeah, sure. So just to check the question there, Jane, it's can an organisation be a grant holder, so apply, and also be a downstream partner?
Yes.
Is that right?
An organisation based in Africa, both apply for a community partnership grant as a lead or sole partner, and also be a downstream partner with a UK-based organisation on an impact grant.
Yes, so there's requirements around the number of grants that individual organisations can hold. Those refer to the grant holder, if you like, so the lead organisation. So there it is around the maximum. So if it's community partnership or impact, it's a maximum of 2 live grants at any one time, and live grants we define as 9 months. That refers specifically to the grant holder organisation. So would be fine for downstream, if does that answer the question?
I think just to add to that, it's probably important as well. It depends what country within Africa, just to check that that country is on that eligible list that I referred to earlier.
So yes, so the answer is with the proviso that the African country is on the list of eligible. Now it's back to COVID-19 again. It may not be possible to get statistical data on COVID-19 impacts at country or local level, especially for gender or disability disaggregated. It's more likely to be anecdotal. Is that going to be acceptable?
Yes, yeah, we appreciate that the even the data that's being published isn't, there's some questions around validity of data in different contexts and countries at the moment. So yes, we appreciate that may be challenging to pull together an anecdotal evidence. It is fine.
What are the key elements of an application that will make it stand out from the others?
Yeah, good question. I think it's really the points I've highlighted in those boxes on the slides that I whizzed through a little bit at the end there, but it's really around making sure, the biggest thing is around articulating the changes that you anticipate to see. So we see a lot of applications that focus quite heavily on much more input-based, activity-based responses to the questions, and what we're really looking for you to be able to explain is do the problem analysis, so really delving into the root causes, and that we would hope that that's informed by local stakeholders, and that there's been stakeholder consultation in that process, both that could be with community members, traditional leaders, and working with your partners really to understand that, local government as well, and then linking that to the interventions and the approach that you're proposing to deliver, and being able to really clearly articulate that sort of this is the problem today, and this is the root causes of the problem, and if we use this funding to deliver X, Y, and Z, this is what we expect to see as a change. And really being able to articulate that is quite key.
I know that you're developing some FAQs, Mannion Daniels, which you're putting together as a result of previous webinars like this. I've had a question which we might find is answered on those FAQs when they come, which is about IATI. Can you expand at all on what you've given on the website information already, on the amount of IATI compliance and costs that you're looking for?
Sure, Laura, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So for community partnership and impact grants, if you successfully apply for one, you'll be required to publish your project data to the IATI platform within 6 months of the start of your project or the signing of your accountable grant agreement. And I'm sure quite a few people are familiar with the IATI platform. As the lead grant holder, we would encourage you to work with your downstream partner for them also to publish to the platform. We have, it's just been shared, but we have some specific guidance available on our website as well. I think it's about 10 pages long, so it should give will give much more detailed information as well. So we'd encourage you to look at that.
That's good.
Sorry, Jane, just to say, I think with IATI as well, it's always worth speaking to, if you're able to, speaking to another organisation that's already publishing, because I think it's it is a bit of a maze, and our guidance hopefully will help you through that. But I'd highly recommend, if you're able to, reaching out to another organisation, perhaps another grant holder or otherwise, who is familiar with the platform and published, as I'm sure they'll be able to share some really useful advice.
I think to my colleague Laura, that's something which maybe we could be looking at picking up on ourselves at the Alliance. We have on our online Alliance community, there are a couple of different threads, a number of different threads running. I'm not sure if we've got one for IATI publishing so that people can share information, but we'll definitely look into that one and take it forward and see what we can actually do. Now, one on detailed stakeholder analysis. Can detailed stakeholder analysis be in the concept note stage or outlined in the concept note stage and then deepened, providing an applicant gets through to the next stage, to the full application stage?
Yes, yes, it can. So the concept note stage is designed to be, you know, a concept note, so lighter touch than the full application. So we would hope that you've had some level of engagement to agree kind of what concept should be put forwards with local stakeholders. But obviously that's absolutely fine, and sort of to be expected that you would then deepen that engagement and analysis at full application stage.
That's good. We've got time for literally just a couple more. Match funding. Could you just confirm for us, please? Match funding this time around anyway, not needed for impact grants, nor for the community partnership?
Yeah.
Neither?
Yeah, that's
no
correct.
Match funding in this next round?
Yes, so for future rounds, impact grants will again have to be required to provide 25% match funding, but for this round, that requirement has been removed, and it was never there for community partnership grants.
Right. So impact not this time, and there isn't any for Small Charities Challenge Fund either, is there?
No.
Okay, that's good. One more final question from the ones that were submitted in advance, which was to do with the inclusion or not of a log frame diagram at concept note stage. For an applicant who wanted to put one in, is there room for a log frame diagram to be inserted in the concept?
Yes, there's a supporting documents section, I believe, on our application form. I will double check that with our SMILE team, just to make sure I'm not giving the wrong information there, but I'll verify it and make sure that the response is clear. I believe there's a supporting documents section available in the application form where you could submit that if you so choose to. It's not a requirement, but we will have a look if you choose to submit.
That's great. And particularly Laura and Sarah from Mannion Daniels, the information you provide for us is comprehensive and good on the website. And I think you're about to provide even more with recordings of previous webinars and with FAQs you're compiling. But actually there is nothing quite like hearing from you to you or your other colleagues direct. It does make a difference. It's illustrative and extra helpful. Pauline, biggest thank you to you as well. Those kind of real life experiences and those tips that you pass on, which are beyond what you can read on FAQs and so on and so forth. It's you've lived it, you continue to live it. I hope the rest of your project goes extremely well, and I'm particularly grateful to you for making time for us today. So thank you also to everybody who joined us, all the participants. I'm sorry we didn't get through all the questions, but we nearly did. Please keep in touch with us. Please let us know how you think we might be able to do better. And I hope that we shall all meet again, maybe even physically rather than virtually in the not too distant future. Good luck everyone who wants to apply and develop a concept. The deadline is 30th of June, and till we meet again, thank you.